For privacy reasons, names and places have been changed. This story is inspired by true events.
On a bright summer morning in July 1995, 14-year-old Ethan Turner and his 16-year-old stepbrother Ross set out to explore the presidential trail at Mount Rushmore National Memorial. The brothers, part of a newly blended family from Minneapolis, were eager to photograph the iconic monument during their Midwest road trip. They never returned to their waiting parents. Despite an exhaustive search operation across the Black Hills involving park rangers, local law enforcement, and hundreds of volunteers, the Turner brothers seemed to vanish into thin air. For 23 years, their family lived with the haunting uncertainty of what happened on that fateful morning at one of America's most visited landmarks. Then, in 2018, a routine construction project at the park would unearth a dark secret, one that would expose a predator who had turned this monument to American history into his own killing ground. This is the complete investigation into what happened to Ethan and Ross Turner. Before we continue, let us know where you're watching from, and if you enjoy this content, consider liking and subscribing to our channel. Now let's continue. On a bright summer morning in 1995, the Turner family arrived at Mount Rushmore National Memorial, their station wagon pulling into the crowded parking lot as the morning sun cast long shadows across the famous presidential faces. For 14-year-old Ethan and his 16-year-old stepbrother Ross, this stop marked the highlight of their cross-country family vacation, a journey meant to bond their newly blended family. The massive granite faces of Washington, Jefferson, Roosevelt, and Lincoln loomed above them as they joined the steady stream of tourists making their way toward the main viewing area. Sarah Turner, their mother, would later recall how both boys were in unusually high spirits that morning, eager to explore the winding trails that snaked through the Black Hills wilderness. The family spent the early hours together, taking photos and listening to ranger presentations about the monument's history. Around 11 that morning, Ethan and Ross asked permission to hike the presidential trail alone, a common request from teenagers seeking independence. Their parents agreed, instructing them to meet at the main visitor center in 2 hours. The brothers carried a single backpack between them, packed with water bottles, trail mix, and a disposable camera. Security footage, later recovered from the visitor center, showed them starting their hike at 11:17 a.m. They were dressed similarly in shorts and t-shirts, Ross wearing his characteristic Minnesota Twins baseball cap, Ethan in his favorite red windbreaker. When the boys failed to return by the agreed meeting time, their parents initially assumed they had lost track of time, absorbed in their adventure. By 3 o'clock, with no sign of the teenagers, concern began to mount. The family alerted park rangers, who immediately initiated a search of the most popular trails. At 4:45 p.m., a park volunteer discovered 2 backpacks placed neatly on a bench at Eagles Point, a scenic overlook approximately 1 mile from the main viewing area. Inside were the boys' water bottles, still half full, and the disposable camera with 23 photos, taken, the last one capturing Ross smiling broadly with the president's faces in the background. The discovery triggered a full-scale search and rescue operation. Park rangers, led by Agent Rebecca Foster of the National Park Service Law Enforcement, coordinated with local authorities to comb the surrounding area. As darkness fell, helicopter searchlights swept across the rugged terrain while ground teams with tracking dogs worked their way through the dense forest below. Sarah Turner and her husband James maintained a vigil at the visitor center, watching as more emergency vehicles arrived and search teams deployed into the gathering dusk. The boys' younger sister, Amy, clutched her mother's hand, repeatedly asking when her brothers would return. Local news crews arrived as word of the disappearance spread, their cameras capturing the growing tension as the search stretched into the night. The Turner family appeared on the evening news, pleading for anyone with information to come forward. The boys' photos, Ross's school portrait showing his characteristic half-smile, and Ethan's recent baseball team photo became familiar images across South Dakota's news outlets. By midnight, more than 60 searchers were involved, including volunteers from nearby communities. The operation continued through the night, but yielded nothing more than the backpacks and a single footprint that might have belonged to either boy. The following morning brought no answers, only more questions. How could two teenage boys vanish from one of America's most visited national monuments? The Presidential Trail, while scenic, was well-maintained and frequently traveled. There were no reports of dangerous wildlife in the area, and the weather had been clear and mild. As the sun rose over Mount Rushmore that second day, illuminating the president's faces in golden morning light, the magnitude of the mystery began to settle over the park. 2 young lives had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only a backpack full of summer memories and a family desperate for answers. No one could have imagined that the truth would remain hidden for 23 years, buried beneath the very ground where tourists continued to walk, oblivious to the darkness that lurked in the shadow of America's most iconic monument. The initial 48 hours following the Turner brothers' disappearance transformed Mount Rushmore from a tourist destination into a hub of intense investigative activity. Agent Rebecca Foster established a command center in the visitor complex, coordinating with Pennington County Sheriff's Department and South Dakota State Police to orchestrate what would become one of the largest search operations in the monument's history. Search teams methodically divided the area into grids, focusing first on the Presidential Trail and its immediate surroundings. Experienced rangers knew that lost hikers typically didn't stray far from marked paths, but the Turner case quickly defied conventional wisdom. Despite perfect weather conditions and clear visibility, no signs of the brothers emerged beyond their abandoned backpacks. The investigation faced unique challenges in the Black Hills terrain. The granite formations created natural caves and crevices that required specialized climbing teams to examine. Echo patterns in the valleys complicated the effectiveness of search dogs, while the dense pine forests limited aerial surveillance capabilities. Each passing hour diminished the likelihood of finding the boys alive, a reality that Agent Foster struggled to convey to the distraught Turner family. Local media coverage intensified as the search expanded. News vans lined the monument's parking lots, broadcasting regular updates to a concerned public. The Turner family's press conference, held on the third day, drew national attention. Sarah Turner, barely maintaining her composure, pleaded for anyone with information to come forward. "They're good boys," she said, her voice breaking. "They wouldn't just wander off. Someone must have seen something." The investigation team conducted extensive interviews with other visitors present on the day of the disappearance. Dozens of tourists had photographed the area, and investigators painstakingly reviewed hundreds of vacation snapshots, searching for any glimpse of the brothers after their last known sighting. Several witnesses recalled seeing 2 teenage boys matching their description near Eagles Point, but accounts varied on the crucial detail of whether they were alone. Park employees underwent thorough questioning, particularly those working the trails and visitor areas during the critical time window. Dale Mitchell, the maintenance supervisor, provided detailed information about the trail's condition and recent repair work, noting nothing unusual about the day except increased visitor traffic due to perfect weather conditions. As the first week drew to a close, investigators had compiled a substantial case file, but faced a troubling lack of physical evidence. The brothers' backpacks yielded no useful fingerprints beyond their own. The single footprint found near Eagles Point matched Ross's shoe type, but proved inconclusive due to the heavy foot traffic in the area. Sheriff Patricia Anderson, leading the criminal investigation aspect, explored darker possibilities. Missing persons cases involving siblings were rare, and the careful placement of the backpacks suggested something more sinister than a hiking accident. However, extensive searches revealed no signs of struggle or foul play. The case attracted attention from missing persons experts nationwide. Dr. Michael Thumps, a forensic anthropologist specializing in wilderness disappearances, consulted on the investigation. He noted the unusual nature of the case. Most lost hikers left more substantial evidence trails, and the complete absence of additional clues defied statistical norms. By the end of the second week, the search operation had covered over 50 square miles of terrain. Helicopters had logged hundreds of flight hours, while ground teams had explored every accessible cave and crevice in the vicinity. The lack of results began to wear on even the most experienced searchers. The Turner family remained at Mount Rushmore for 3 weeks, hoping against hope for answers. They watched as the command center gradually scaled back operations, as the media presence thinned, and as the steady stream of volunteers dwindled to a handful of dedicated searchers. The monument's visitors returned to their normal routines, snapping photos and hiking trails that had so recently been scrutinized for clues, while 2 empty beds in Minneapolis waited for brothers who would never return home. As summer faded into autumn in 1995, the search for Ethan and Ross Turner gradually transformed from an active investigation into one of South Dakota's most perplexing cold cases. The once bustling command center at Mount Rushmore stood empty, its walls still covered with maps marked by search patterns and timelines that had yielded no answers. Sheriff Patricia Anderson faced mounting pressure to allocate resources elsewhere as new cases demanded attention. In her 20 years of law enforcement, the Turner case uniquely haunted her. Missing persons cases usually give us something, she would later recall. A witness, a clue, a pattern. The Turner brothers simply vanished, as if the mountain itself had swallowed them whole. The jurisdictional complexities of the case created additional challenges. The disappearance occurred on federal land, requiring coordination between National Park Service law enforcement, local authorities, and the FBI. This 3-way division of responsibility sometimes led to communication gaps and delayed responses to potential leads. Back in Minneapolis, the Turner family struggled to rebuild their lives around an absence that felt both temporary and devastatingly permanent. Sarah Turner kept her son's rooms exactly as they had left them, dusty baseball trophies and dog-eared comic books frozen in time. Every few months, she made the long drive to Mount Rushmore, hoping the changing seasons might reveal what summer had hidden. The case file grew thick with false leads and dead ends. A hitchhiker in Wyoming claimed to have given a ride to 2 teenagers matching the brothers' description, but the dates didn't align. A psychic from California insisted the boys would be found in a cave system, leading to another fruitless search. Each disappointing lead deepened the investigation's stagnation. Tourism at Mount Rushmore continued unabated, though the incident prompted changes in park security protocols. Rangers increased patrol frequencies on remote trails, and new warning signs advised visitors about hiking safety. The park installed additional emergency phones and surveillance cameras, measures that came too late for the Turner brothers, but aimed to prevent future tragedies. By 1998, the case had grown cold enough to feature on national true crime television shows. These broadcasts generated occasional tips, but none provided the breakthrough investigators desperately sought. Agent Rebecca Foster maintained a special interest in the case, reviewing the files on quiet afternoons and walking the presidential trail during her off hours, trying to see something everyone else had missed. The disappearance became part of local folklore, joining other mysterious vanishings in the Black Hills. Some linked it to old Native American legends about the mountain's spiritual power, while others developed more conspiratorial theories. But for the investigators who knew the case intimately, the explanation felt frustratingly mundane. Somewhere in the vast expanse of the Black Hills lay answers, buried beneath years of silence. The case's impact rippled through the law enforcement community. Sheriff Anderson implemented new protocols for missing persons cases, emphasizing the crucial first 48 hours and the importance of preserving potential crime scenes, even in seemingly straightforward disappearances. The National Park Service revised its visitor tracking systems and emergency response procedures. As the years passed, the Turner case file moved to increasingly dustier shelves, but never quite disappeared from law enforcement consciousness. New rangers at Mount Rushmore learned about the brothers during their training, a cautionary tale about the mountain's capacity for holding secrets. The annual review of cold cases always included the Turner file, though with diminishing hope of resolution. Yet beneath the surface of this seemingly cold case, unseen gears were turning. Park Maintenance Supervisor Dale Mitchell continued his daily routines, carrying his secrets past countless visitors who photographed the monument's majestic faces. And deep in the earth, under what would eventually become the site of a new visitor facility, evidence lay waiting, preserved by the same soil that had hidden it from searchers so many years before. The truth would remain buried for 23 years. As families visited the monument, rangers changed shifts, and the seasons turned. Mount Rushmore kept its silence, standing witness to both the darkness it harbored and the justice that would eventually come to light. In March 2018, the steady rhythm of construction machinery echoed across Mount Rushmore National Memorial as work began on a new visitor facility. The project, designed to modernize the park's aging infrastructure, would inadvertently unearth secrets buried for over 2 decades. On a crisp morning, excavator operator Jim Reeves noticed something unusual in the soil beneath what had once been employee housing. His machine's bucket had turned up what appeared to be fabric, weathered by time but unmistakably artificial. Work halted immediately as park officials cordoned off the area. Dr. Michael Thompson arrived on site within hours. The forensic anthropologist had worked hundreds of cases throughout his career, but the sight that gradually emerged from the dark earth made him pause. 2 sets of human remains lay carefully positioned, accompanied by fragments of clothing that had somehow survived the passage of time. The excavation proceeded with painstaking precision. Each layer of soil revealed new details: a corroded watch, fragments of a Minnesota Twins baseball cap, and most significantly, a red windbreaker, its color dulled by years underground but still recognizable. For Agent Rebecca Foster, who had never truly let go of the Turner case, these items triggered an immediate recognition. Laboratory analysis confirmed what many had already suspected. The remains belonged to Ethan and Ross Turner, their final resting place less than a mile from where their backpacks had been discovered 23 years earlier. The revelation sent shockwaves through the law enforcement community and reopened wounds that had never fully healed. But the Turner brothers were not alone. As investigators expanded their search area, they discovered additional personal effects: a woman's wedding ring, a man's wallet preserved in a plastic bag, and a child's bracelet. Each item told its own story of lives abruptly ended, of families left wondering, of questions unanswered for years. The Turner family received the news with a complex mixture of grief and relief. Sarah Turner, now gray-haired but still carrying her son's photos in her wallet, spoke in barely a whisper when agents informed her of the discovery. "At least now we know," she said, touching the faded images of her boys. "At least now they're not lost anymore." The excavation site transformed into one of the largest forensic operations in South Dakota history. Teams of specialists meticulously documented every detail, photographing, measuring, and cataloging each piece of evidence. The soil itself became a witness, its layers recording the terrible events that had taken place there. Dr. Thompson's preliminary findings painted a grim picture. The brothers had died from blunt force trauma, their bodies deliberately concealed beneath the foundation of the employee housing unit. The precision of the burial suggested planning and familiarity with the area. This had not been a random act of violence, but something far more calculated. The discovery forced the National Park Service to confront uncomfortable questions about its past. The location of the remains on park property, beneath staff housing, pointed to someone with intimate knowledge of the facility's operations. The careful concealment of evidence suggested access to construction equipment and the freedom to operate without arousing suspicion. Local media descended upon Mount Rushmore once again, but this time with a different story to tell. The mystery of the Turner brothers had evolved from a tragic disappearance into something far darker. The presidential faces looked down upon a crime scene that had laid dormant beneath their watch for 23 years. As spring turned to summer, the excavation continued to yield secrets. Each new discovery added another piece to a puzzle that would reveal a pattern of violence spanning a decade. The Turner brothers, it would turn out, had simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time, witnesses to something they were never meant to see. The granite faces of Mount Rushmore, which had stood silent witness to the tragedy, now watched as truth emerged from the earth below, bringing with it both answers and new questions about the darkness that had lurked beneath one of America's most cherished monuments. The discovery of human remains at Mount Rushmore in 2018 launched an investigation unlike anything the National Park Service had seen before. Modern forensic techniques, unavailable during the original search in 1995, revealed a wealth of evidence preserved by the Black Hills soil. Each layer excavated told a story of calculated violence that had gone undetected for decades. Agent Rebecca Foster, now nearing retirement, found herself working alongside a new generation of investigators. The team established a dedicated forensics lab in Rapid City, where every fragment of evidence underwent rigorous analysis. DNA testing, advanced soil composition studies, and 3D imaging of the burial site painted an increasingly disturbing picture. The breakthrough came through a methodical review of park employment records. Between 1993 and 2003, during the peak of the disappearances, Dale Mitchell had served as maintenance supervisor at Mount Rushmore. His position granted him unrestricted access to all areas of the park, including construction sites and maintenance equipment. More significantly, his work schedule aligned perfectly with each reported disappearance. Mitchell's personnel file revealed a man who kept to himself but performed his duties efficiently. Coworkers described him as helpful but private, often volunteering for solitary tasks and overnight shifts. He had received commendations for his dedication to park maintenance, particularly his willingness to handle emergency repairs in remote areas. The investigation team, led by Sheriff Patricia Anderson, began mapping Mitchell's movements during his decade of employment. Security logs showed he had been on duty during every disappearance, often working near the locations where victims were last seen. His maintenance reports detailed repairs and construction projects that, in retrospect, provided perfect opportunities for concealing evidence. Dr. Michael Thompson's forensic analysis revealed crucial patterns in the burial sites. The precision of the graves, their careful positioning beneath planned construction areas, and the methodical arrangement of bodies all indicated someone with extensive knowledge of park operations and future development plans. The soil composition matched material used in official park maintenance projects, suggesting the use of park equipment for the burials. The investigation uncovered Mitchell's habit of volunteering for projects near popular hiking trails, particularly during peak tourist seasons. He had developed an intimate knowledge of visitor patterns, ranger patrol schedules, and the park's most isolated areas. His maintenance logs, meticulously kept, now served as a timeline of his movements throughout the park. Former colleagues recalled Mitchell's particular interest in lost hikers. He often joined search parties, offering his knowledge of the terrain. This participation, initially seen as dedication to his job, took on a sinister meaning as investigators realized he had been present during searches for victims he had killed, including the Turner brothers. Mitchell's personal life revealed further red flags. He lived alone in park housing, rarely socializing with coworkers. Financial records showed unexpected deposits to his bank account following several disappearances, suggesting he had robbed his victims. He had also accumulated a collection of hiking gear and cameras, items that might have belonged to those who vanished. The investigation team discovered that Mitchell had requested transfers to other national parks but was denied, keeping him at Mount Rushmore where he had established his deadly pattern. His work evaluations noted his exceptional knowledge of the park's infrastructure and his ability to work unsupervised, traits that had inadvertently enabled his crimes. As evidence mounted, investigators realized the Turner brothers' deaths fit into a larger pattern of calculated murders. Mitchell had developed a sophisticated system for targeting visitors, using his position to identify vulnerable victims and his knowledge of the park to dispose of evidence. The brothers had simply been unfortunate witnesses to one of these crimes, forcing Mitchell to silence them. The investigation revealed how Mitchell had exploited the park's vastness and the transient nature of its visitors to avoid detection. He had used maintenance projects to explain his presence in remote areas, construction work to conceal his crimes, and his position of trust to deflect suspicion. The very systems designed to protect visitors had been turned against them by someone who understood them intimately. The case transformed from a cold case mystery into an active manhunt, but Mitchell's death in 2014 meant justice would have to take a different form. The investigation's focus shifted to identifying all his victims and understanding the full scope of his crimes, a process that would bring closure to multiple families and change forever how law enforcement approached security in America's national parks. The breakthrough in the Turner brothers case came not from the grave site itself, but from an unexpected source in Dale Mitchell's former residence. In a weathered metal lockbox, discovered during the estate clearance of his modest Keystone home, investigators found a handwritten confession that would unravel decades of mystery. Mitchell's letter, penned in the months before his death in 2014, detailed a methodical campaign of violence that had terrorized Mount Rushmore for over a decade. Written in neat, precise handwriting that matched his old maintenance logs, the confession revealed how he had transformed from a trusted park employee into a calculating predator. The Turner brothers' fate emerged in chilling detail. On that summer morning in 1995, Ethan and Ross had wandered off the presidential trail, following what they thought was a shortcut. Instead, they stumbled upon Mitchell in the act of burying another victim, a middle-aged tourist he had robbed and killed the previous night. The boy's sudden appearance forced Mitchell's hand. The confession described how he had approached them calmly, using his authority as a park employee to gain their trust. He led them to a maintenance area, promising to show them a secret view of the monument. Instead, he killed them quickly, determined to leave no witnesses. The brothers died within minutes of each other, their final moments spent trying to protect one another. Mitchell's letter revealed a calculated system for disposing of bodies. He used his intimate knowledge of planned construction projects to select burial sites that would soon be covered by new park facilities. The location where the Turner brothers were found had been scheduled for development even in 1995. Mitchell had simply waited for the construction that he knew would eventually come. The confession provided details that only the killer could have known. He described the contents of the brothers' backpack, including a candy wrapper that had never been mentioned in police reports. He noted that Ross had been wearing his baseball cap backward at the moment of his death, a detail confirmed by forensic evidence but never publicly released. More disturbingly, Mitchell's letter showed how he had manipulated the subsequent investigation. He volunteered to help search for the brothers, deliberately steering teams away from the burial site. He even comforted Sarah Turner, all while knowing exactly where her sons lay buried. His participation in the search efforts had been, in his own words, the perfect cover. The document revealed how Mitchell selected his victims, targeting those he believed wouldn't be immediately missed or whose disappearances could be explained as hiking accidents. He took advantage of the park's vast territory and the transient nature of its visitors, knowing that people vanishing in the wilderness rarely aired immediate suspicion. Mitchell's confession extended beyond the Turner case, providing details about 7 other murders committed between 1993 and 2003. Each killing followed a similar pattern: robbery, murder, and careful concealment beneath future construction sites. He had used his position to access restricted areas, his maintenance duties to explain his presence, and his knowledge of park operations to avoid detection. The letter ended with a cold rationalization of his crimes. Mitchell expressed no remorse for the murders, viewing them as merely practical solutions to maintaining his secret. His only regret, he wrote, was not destroying evidence more thoroughly, a failure that he knew might eventually lead to his discovery. For Agent Rebecca Foster and Sheriff Patricia Anderson, the confession provided the answers they had sought for 23 years, but it also raised haunting questions about how Mitchell had operated undetected for so long. The very systems designed to protect visitors' park security, maintenance procedures, search protocols, had been twisted to serve his deadly purpose. The document transformed the investigation from a cold case into something far more complex. A comprehensive review of every missing persons report from Mitchell's tenure at Mount Rushmore. Each disappearance mentioned in his confession would need to be verified, each victim identified, each family notified that their loved one had fallen prey to a killer who wore a Park Service uniform. The resolution of the Mount Rushmore murders brought a wave of change that rippled through America's national park system. In the months following Dale Mitchell's confession, forensic teams identified all 8 of his victims, bringing closure to families who had spent decades wondering about their loved ones' fates. The Turner brothers' parents, now in their 70s, finally held a proper funeral for Ethan and Ross in Minneapolis. Sarah Turner placed their recovered baseball cap and windbreaker in a memorial display case, alongside photographs from their final vacation. "They were together at the end," she said during the service. "That gives me some peace, knowing they had each other." The investigation's findings prompted a comprehensive overhaul of National Park Service security protocols. Agent Rebecca Foster, who had carried the case for 23 years, led the development of new screening procedures for park employees. Background checks became more rigorous, and staff monitoring systems were implemented across all national parks. Sheriff Patricia Anderson's department established a specialized unit dedicated to cold cases in national parks and wilderness areas. The unit's first action was creating a database linking missing persons reports with construction projects and staff assignments, a direct response to Mitchell's methodology of concealing victims beneath planned development sites. Dr. Michael Thompson's forensic work revealed how Mitchell had exploited the park's geology and construction patterns. This knowledge led to new archaeological survey requirements before any construction in national parks, ensuring that ground-penetrating radar would detect any anomalies beneath the surface. The other families affected by Mitchell's crimes formed a support network, sharing their experiences and advocating for improved safety measures in national parks. They established a memorial garden near Mount Rushmore's visitor center, where 8 granite markers bear the names of those lost to Mitchell's violence. Mount Rushmore itself underwent significant changes. The Park Service installed advanced surveillance systems and enhanced communication networks throughout the trails. Rangers received specialized training in recognizing suspicious behavior among staff members, and new protocols required employees to work in pairs in remote areas. The case's impact extended beyond security measures. The story of the Turner brothers and Mitchell's other victims became part of Ranger training curriculum, teaching new officers about the importance of thorough investigation and the dangers of assuming missing persons had simply lost their way. Local law enforcement agencies across the country began reviewing cold cases involving disappearances in national parks. Mitchell's confession provided a template for identifying similar patterns, leading to the resolution of several unrelated cases where park employees had abused their positions. The tourism industry around Mount Rushmore gradually recovered from the revelation of Mitchell's crimes. Visitors still came to see the carved presidents, but now they also stopped at the memorial garden, leaving flowers for the 8 lives cut short by a predator who had hidden behind a uniform. For Agent Foster, the case's resolution brought both satisfaction and sadness. "We found the truth," she said in her final press conference before retirement, "but the cost was too high. 8 families lost loved ones because we failed to see what was happening right in front of us." Sheriff Anderson ensured that the complete case files were preserved as a teaching tool for future law enforcement officers. "The Turner brothers case teaches us to question our assumptions," she wrote in the final report. "Sometimes the monster isn't hiding in the shadows, he's standing in plain sight, wearing a badge." Today, Mount Rushmore stands as both a monument to American history and a reminder of the importance of vigilance. The presidential faces still draw millions of visitors, but the park they explore is fundamentally changed, safer, more closely monitored, and more aware of the darkness that once lurked beneath its majestic surface. The legacy of the Turner brothers and Mitchell's other victims lives on in every security check, every patrol, and every new safety measure implemented across America's national parks. Their tragedy transformed a system, ensuring that future visitors can explore the nation's natural wonders without falling prey to those entrusted with their protection.